And in other news, South Africa has lifted a moratorium on shale gas exploration. That's in the semi-arid Karoo region, where the extraction technique of fracking might be used to tap into some of the world's potentially largest stocks of energy source. According to an initial study commissioned by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, South Africa has 485 trillion cubic feet of technically recoverable shale gas resources, most of which are located in the vast Karoo Basin. We have Jonathon Deal, chairman of the Treasure Karoo Action Group, joining us from our Cape Town studios, and Bonang Mohale, South Africa country chairman of Shale, joining us in studio here. Bonang, thank you very much for joining us. Let's start off with you. And of course, this would be seen as a positive step for Shale, which has explicitly come out and said that you're looking to apply for licenses when that process takes steps. So what does this mean for where we are in the process right now when it comes to shale gas exploration?
Sam, thank you very much for having us. So first of all, clearly we are delighted by Cabinet's decision to endorse the recommendation to the DMR minister to lift the moratorium. Remember, this is the process that we started in 2009 with the technical cooperation permit. We are of the view that even though we operate in 104 countries, South Africa is a critical market because it holds the 5th largest gas reserves in the world. And we know that in the world today, there is more gas reserves than there are crude reserves, especially because we use this gas for electricity generation that is highly needed by 10 million South Africans who, as we speak, have absolutely no access to any form of energy whatsoever.
Jonathon, let's get your view on this, because you have been obviously opposing shale and shale gas exploration and fracking in the Karoo. What are the key reasons that you don't want this to go ahead?
Samantha, basically there is such a lot of unsettled science. One of the questions, for instance, that the applicants in South Africa and indeed the government themselves have never acknowledged or dealt with is that fracking or the technology of shale gas mining is banned or under some form of moratorium or restriction in around about 160 places around the world at the moment. And with many dozens more places agitating for this technology not to get started. Now, that involves tens of millions of people in countries where the technology can be seen, the effects are experienced, negative or positive. The benefits and the effects are experienced, and these people are telling their local governments and their representatives they do not want fracking where they get drinking water, where they raise their children, where they grow crops. There has to be a good reason for that. On that basis alone, there is enough reason for our government to proceed with utmost caution in terms of companies like Bulgaria and France, states like Vermont in the United States, cities like Pittsburgh turning around and saying there's a total ban on fracking. So we really need a far longer and more inclusive investigation of this technology before South Africans can accept it and decide that it is the wise and sustainable course for this country.
And you don't think that the 1.5-year moratorium, where they have in fact been doing studies, was long enough? I mean, what type of interaction do you have with the DMR, and how open are they to listening to these concerns and taking account of what's taking place, as you say, in places like Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that 1.5-year moratorium doesn't exist. It was mentioned in the moratorium was imposed on the 20th of April last year. We have documentation that showed to us by the end of August 2011, the task team was still largely disorganized. We have had no communication with them. We had to sue Minister Shabangu in High Court to get her to even divulge to us the names of the people on the task team. And Samantha, more than the departments that are on the task team, the ones that are missing really concern us. Rural development, agriculture, tourism, health, transport, those are all sectors that are experiencing a phenomenal knock-on cost, not benefit, but cost in the United States from fracking. Those ministries should be involved in South Africa, and they've been excluded. And to take a decision on fracking in this country on that basis is irresponsible of our government.
The licenses haven't been awarded yet for exploration. What is Shell going to do to address concerns of communities like this? And are you having issues in the rest of the world where you're having to back down on shale gas exploration because of moratoriums like this being in place?
Sam, with the greatest of respect, let me try and puncture some inflated fallacies on what Jonathon has said. The first thing that he says is, of course, this is banned in 136 countries. The fact is, and Jonathon is a good friend of mine, there are more countries in the world where shale gas has been allowed and indeed approved than those not banned, have imposed moratoria for those governments to better inform themselves about the benefits or their lack thereof of environmental impact of this technology called hydraulic fracture. That's one. The second one that really needs to be addressed is that he says we need longer time to investigate. Hydraulic fracturing, it's a 60-year-old technology. Shell has been doing this technology for more than 30 years. The United States of America alone has successfully hydraulically fractured 1.1 million wells. 5 years ago, the United States of America was in a position where it was overly dependent for their energy needs on countries like the Middle East. Now, in 2010, they are a net exporter of energy, having created an $80 billion industry. And all of this in a space of 5 years. And surely we have an opportunity as a people to also responsibly, with the greatest respect to the environment, to the people of the Karoo, to at least go and find out what was found out by Moss, Haas, and Sukor in 1967.
When there are concerns about South Africa and the differences with America, is that the shale gas layers are 4,000 meters, 6,000 meters deep. Is that correct?
This is absolutely
and
correct.
A lot deeper than what they are in the States, where you find shale gas. So, of course, there are issues around the impact that it will have on the rock structure, the issues that they will have on water at those levels, and contamination of that.
So your first question was the concerns of the people of the Karoo. I think as a company, we take this very seriously. In fact, one of the 7 commitments that we made after the 2 10-day each public consultation processes, as prescribed by very stringent laws that Royal Dutch Shell has ever met anywhere else in the world, where we are currently doing fracking in 4 continents, including Australia with a company called Arrow, is that we're not going to compete for water with the people of the Karoo, because their concerns, where are you going to get the water? What are you going to do to ensure that this water is not contaminated?
Where are you going to get the water from?
And part of this deepness is actually a salvation for us, because where this shale gas is located is 2.5 to 4,000 meters. South Africa has the best technology in the world. The deepest mine in the world is found here, Western Deep Level, now called Bonang Mine. And we're hoping to use that technology to be able to go down. Where you find the water, and what we anticipate to use is firstly the brackish water that is found 4 kilometers down. It's dirty, full of bacteria. This is the water that we take, we clean it up, we use it. When you do a simple mathematical calculation that each well will probably need 1 million liters of water, you then say, oh, 24 wells, therefore it could be 24 million liters. It is disingenuous, because everywhere else in the world, Shell has actually reused up to 50% of the water that we have found, which is really brackish. The other source could be river water. The third could even be seawater. So there are always means. As we speak to you, we spend $30 billion per annum on research and development to find better, more environmentally friendly methods that might not even be dependent on water to be able to do fracking.
Let's cross over to Jonathon. Jonathon, I mean, you're hearing what Bonang has to say here. Does this give you any confidence? I mean, what if Shell had to make concessions and had to come forward with a deal that is accepted by the people of the Karoo, and they are able to use technology that is less water reliant? And, you know, what is your response to these comments?
Yeah, Samantha, Bonang has built his entire case for shale gas this afternoon around Shell. Now, I am on record in the media in South Africa, and in terms of writing directly to our cabinet ministers and to Shell, of pointing out to Shell that their marketing campaign and their figures are misleading, and that the South African public has not heard the truth. As we sit now, there have been violations in the last 18 months by Shell companies in the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, more than 40 of them on fracking operations. This was during the time that the Shell executives in this country were touring the country, telling South Africans that fracking is safe and not harmful to the environment.
And by violations, Jonathon, you mean?
I beg your pardon?
By violations, can you elaborate?
Yes, I can, certainly. For instance, 11 instances of leaving a gas well unplugged on abandonment, 4 instances of allowing pollutional materials to enter the waters of the Commonwealth, 1 instance of failing to prevent the upward migration of gas and fluids to higher water formations. So that's the type of violation, and I'm happy to provide this information. I have already given it to Shell, in fact. However, this is not a Shell bashing session. My point is that if Shell are holding themselves out, Samantha, as the global standard setter, as the best company, and this is what we can expect from the best company, can you imagine what this country, which has not got the ability to regulate even our current mining operations, is going to handle with the plethora of smaller operations that will follow Shell into this country on the heels of a decision to allow fracking? That is one of our primary concerns.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go.
So let me start with a simple demonstration of how you can use facts misleadingly. Jonathan, when he started, he said the moratorium has not had enough time, and indeed it's misleading precisely because it was imposed in February, on the 20th of April. This can be true because the Minister, Susan Shabangu, imposed the moratorium in February. So it adds another 2 months. Cabinet decided to endorse.
Let's not argue about the time frame of the moratorium. The issue here is that Shell has had violations overseas. They're saying, you know, how can you set yourself up to be the standard when you come into the country, and how will we make sure that those kind of violations don't take place in the Karoo, in the homes of people whose families perhaps have lived there for generations?
Sam, if that's where you direct me not to question lies when they are said, let me then say in answer to this. First of all, as a company, we take HSSE very seriously. Health, safety, security, and environment. And like I said, this is a company that has been in this country for 108 years. We now have an opportunity to create a brand new industry that will give not only the people of the Karoo, the 50 million South Africans, energy, environmental, and economic benefits. And we do that with the greatest of respect to the people of the Karoo and indeed the environment. We were the first international oil company to publish 5 standards around fracking, the design and the execution of wells. This is on record. We're the first company that went out and did a public consultation process where in the first instance we had 2,300 written submissions. In total, 6,300 written submissions in all, which then precipitated our environmental management plan to be a whopping 8,000 pages, precisely to respond to every single solitary one of the concerns that have been raised by the people of the Karoo. So we commit ourselves to the South Africans to work closely with Jonathon Deal, my friend of the Treasure Karoo Action Group, but also with the Karoo Action Forum, a formation that is supportive of this, spanning 16 organizations across the breadth and the width of the Karoo.
Okay, Jonathan, another question I have for you is, who's to say that the DMR obviously recognizes all these views, all these issues right now, and they aren't going to place the type of regulation, stringent regulation necessary to ensure that concerns like those that have been raised by you are met, and that we don't have violations here in South Africa like the ones that you're talking about in America?
Now, Samantha, thank you. One very quick thing I'd like to just put in there. One of the organizations that Bonang failed to mention is the Southern Cape Land Committee, which represents impoverished, unemployed, rural people who have taken it upon themselves to stand up against fracking. So it's not just people of my caliber that are standing up against fracking, but also the rural communities. In any event, I believe, to answer your question specifically, that I don't think that in a technology as risky and unpopular internationally as what fracking is, that it is the right forum for our government or Shell to prove that they can manage the technology and that they can actually be trusted. They need to go and clean up their record books elsewhere and then come and talk to South Africa.
Okay, well, it is definitely a hot debate at this point in time. And we will continue to have it here on CNBC Africa. So Jonathon, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for coming and bringing your views. Jonathon Deal, Chairman of the Treasure Karoo Action Group from our Cape Town studios, and of course Bonang Mohale, South Africa Country Chairman at Shale.